YouTube comments, got to dive into them YouTube streets, and got a guest on. Big Sarge Brian Bearfield of the Texan Wire joins the show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the weekend episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, even on the weekends. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepick.com, promo code Locked On. I'm John Hickman. That's Cody Davis on this Saturday show for the Locked On Texan podcast. We're going to timestamp it as we like to do during the offseason because for the Houston Texans, there is no such thing as a normal offseason. There's always something going on in the past couple of seasons. We don't know what's going to break out and happen. So today is Thursday evening. We are recording this on Thursday. We'll be joined by Big Sarge to talk all things Texans offseason up until this point. Before we do that, Cody, where we going?
YouTube comments.
YouTube. Roy Payne on the What's Next? What should the Houston Texans do with Brandon Cooks and Davis Mills podcast?
Oh, Lord.
Roy Payne said, John, I like what you said. I have been saying that all along. Someone is going to have to show the new quarterback what to do. We trade Mills. It's going to hurt us. Mills is a good quarterback. Maybe not the starter, but let's see what happens. Go Texans. Any response to that, Cody, in terms of moving on from Davis Mills?
I like that because I think a lot of times when you hear a veteran player, I think you could consider Davis Mills a veteran now. It's been going on 3 years, but anytime you have an experienced or a veteran player, there's always that notion that it should be like an old head or whatever the case might be. But to think back what you said on, I believe that was the Thursday installment of Locked On Texans, I will agree to a certain extent because as both of you guys mentioned, someone is going to have to show, whether it's CJ, whether it's Bryce, the ins and out on what not to do, especially what not to do. I would just like to see the Houston Texans move on from Davis Mills because, as I mentioned on that show, I still see talent and potential in Davis Mills, and I would hate for him to, one, still be with an organization and a franchise who doesn't believe in him, and two, and most importantly, I still believe that he is too young to all of a sudden take that backseat role behind a rookie and be more so of a mentor and teacher because when you go back to this past season, there is still a lot that Davis Mills still have to learn himself, especially the mental aspect of the game. Because remember, he didn't say the game started slowing down until he watched from the sideline after Lovie Smith benched him for those 2 games for Kyle Allen.
All right, let's move on to the next comment. Michael Moore, I want our defense to be great, our offense, to be great for once. It's never been good since day one, or defense will be good regardless, but I want an offense that people talk about when Sean Payton. I do want to disagree with that, Michael Moore. The Houston Texans has had some seasons where their offense has been top 5 in the league. The last Deshaun Watson year, where a lot of those wins and points didn't matter, they were one of the better passing offenses in the league. But we're going to see Sean Payton a lot until he decides to sign with Denver or who else is out on the table for Sean Payton's services. But Michael Moore, my question to you is Sean Payton worth $20 million per year in your humble opinion, Michael Moore? That's my question here, and I would to respectfully say no. My boy Everett Texas Hatch, he said, go get Brock Purdy. He's balling. I believe he can go for the number 12 pick of the draft, and we can draft Jalen Carter. I'm not. I like Brock Purdy for what he's doing with Kyle Shanahan and that system. But Cody, I've been on record by saying and singing praise like melodies from heaven type of praises for Kyle Shanahan, how great of an offensive play caller he is. But Brock Purdy in the Houston Texans will be a disaster. Brock Purdy in the Houston Texans, you know what that would be? Brock Osweiler 2.0. So that's a note of that.
I like that comment because the San Francisco 49ers, especially, and I hope they do, especially if they end up beating the Dallas Cowboys and get to the NFC Championship game, they're going to be in a very interesting position because they're going to be in a standpoint of who's going to be the starting quarterback moving forward. GBG, he's coming off a foot injury. Same thing as Trey Lance. And you traded, what was it, 2-3 first round picks to get to the number 3 pick to draft him. And then the guy that has you on a 6-game, hopefully 7-game win streak was Mr. Irrelevant of the draft. This offseason, I think the 49ers might be in a position where they can rob an organization for some capital, some young talent. I just hope that organization isn't the Houston Texans, especially when you consider the past, I'm going to use this term, lust that they once had for Jimmy G.
It was nasty too.
Mm-hmm.
It was nasty. So one thing that I've been noticing in the YouTube comments before we move on is there's been a lot of great back and forth in between listeners and viewers on YouTube, man. Guys have been stating their opinion, and there's been some fun follow-ups by other people that are catching the YouTube comments. And I want to shout out to you guys because not only are you guys out there having fun, back and forth conversation, but y'all are keeping it respectful. And in the world of sports, we don't necessarily get that too much. So shout out to you guys, and I want to end off with my man X Davis, man. Shout out to X, man. This was on the future Texans, Houston Texans in a win-win NFL draft situation on that podcast a couple of days ago. This was the Tuesday podcast. X said that the Houston Texans are still settling for mediocrity. Sean Payton is the best coaching candidate, can get this franchise turned around, but we will settle for a potential one-and-done rookie head coach. Shaking my head. X, I typically love everything that you say, tweet or post, but I don't think that's the case for Houston. They cannot afford another one-and-done rookie coach, one-and-done coach. So it may be a rookie head coach. It may be a coach that's his first time being a head coach is with the Houston Texans, but it will not be one and done. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made super easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. You can bet the over-under on receptions. You can bet the over-under on rushing yards. You can bet the over-under on who's going to have touchdown here and there. Super simple, super easy, and even field goal and punts on Prize Pick app. And our first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Make sure you visit prizepicks.com and use promo code Locked On as sign up.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Saturday installment of Locked On Texans. And as promised, we have our brother, Mr. Brian Bearfield. You guys know him as Big Sarge, back on the podcast. Sarge, what's going on? Welcome back, my brother.
Greetings and salutations, Cody M. Davis. Thank you for having me.
Hey,
what's going on? It feels so good to be back. Y'all country cousin back onto the podcast. Hey!
I knew it was coming. Sarge,
y'all for a reason. I don't know why. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why y'all don't let me come on. You only bring me on when the other person can't show up.
No, that's not what happened. But Sarge, let's jump right into it. As you know, this past week was a big week for the Houston Texans. They had several head coaching interviews, and on yesterday, they had an opportunity to interview San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator, former Houston Texans Pro Bowl All-Pro linebacker, Demeco Ryans. So, Sarge, I want to jump in first, starting off talking about Demeco Ryans. Do you think that is a good candidate, and if so, why?
I think that Demeco Ryans should have been the only candidate. Now, I understand the Rooney Rule where you have to bring in, you have to interview at least 2 minority candidates. So, having the other 2 guys come in, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in. The check's in the mail. And, also interview Sean Payton so it could give the coaching search some credibility. Hey, we'll bring in a big name that everybody knows, everybody wants, but no, there's no possible way that the Houston Texans should allow Demeco Ryans to say no. And I don't care if that means that you have to change 610 to Demeco Ryan Freeway, Kirby to Demeco Ryan's Way. Like, you don't do it. And the reason why I say that you don't do it is because not only does Demeco know how to play the game, not only does Demeco know how to play on the defensive side of the ball, the tutelage and the knowledge that he received from Robert Saleh, the head coach of the New York Jets, is something that a lot of people, I think, are taking for granted. And that knowledge and what he has done, what Demeco Ryans has done since Robert Saleh has left, is all he did was kept it going. Now, the reason why I feel that the Houston Texans should hire Demeco Ryans is because you look at what Robert Saleh did for his rookie Sauce Gardner, made him an all-pro within 1 year, put him in the right scheme, made him an all-pro. I think that Demeco Ryans can do that exact same thing for Derek Stingley Jr. And if you have that, if you have a mindset to say that I'm going to make you one of the best cornerbacks in the game, along with one of the most dangerous up-and-coming free safeties in Jalen Petrie, with a middle linebacker like Christian Harris, now you have that makings of taking it to the next level. So if you go out and you draft a quarterback, you draft some other offensive pieces, you bring somebody along who you trust, that that can run the offense. But the one thing that makes the San Francisco 49ers so dangerous is that, yes, Shanahan is a brilliant mind. He has one of the best offensive minds in the game right now. You can tell that with the way that he schemes with a 3rd-string quarterback in Brock Purdy. What people fail to realize is that the reason why you can do that is because if Brock Purdy goes out there and make a mistake, it doesn't matter because the defense is going to go get us the ball back. And if the defense can get us the ball back, then we know what we messed up. We got another chance. And if he messes that up, don't worry about it. The defense can go out there and get you the ball again. So if you bring in Demeco Ryans and you revamp that defense, you put that defense in a whole different type of scheme, then wherever your deficiencies is on the offensive side of the ball, it does not matter because the defense is going to go and get it back for you so you can do it over again. Robert Saleh had 2 All-Pros this year in New York. Two defensive All-Pros this year in New York. You know what Demeco Ryans had in San Francisco on the defensive side of the ball? 2 All-Pros. So now if you bring all of that knowledge and bring everything that entails what he wants to do on the defensive side of the ball, because we know that it'll be an upgrade from what Lovie Smith was in that antiquated Tampa 2 defense. So now we get a chance to see exactly what these young defenders can do. Also, Sean Payton, yes, that's cool. He has a name. And Cody, I'm not saying this because I know how, I know that you are, I know who you're a fan of. I'm not going to say
that. Nola, baby.
I know that you're a fan. So I get it, right? I get that the name Sean Payton, rings loud. But what you're also trying to do is you're also trying to resonate with what these young guys and what these guys that are going to be free agents, a little bit of the older guys, so you're trying to resonate with them that, wow, I know what Demeco Ryans can do. they're going to all be watching the 49ers. There are going to be a lot of free agents watching the 49ers this weekend. There's been a lot of free agents that have been watching the 49ers the last 2 years. They know what that defensive side of the ball is. They know what the offensive side of the ball could potentially be if he brings in the right person. So now what do? Now that you have Demeco Ryans, you have a person that a lot of the players can relate to, and he's a former player. So he has all the intangibles, and he has the intangibles and the resume to be the next head coach for the Houston Texans. I think now we're at a point where he has to decide whether he wants to be or not.
And I'm glad that you pointed all those factors out, because it's kind of similar to what I said on yesterday's show, to where I broke down 4 factors as to why Demeco Ryans should be the Houston Texans' best candidate. Because, first and foremost, the type of broken relationship that this organization has with their fan base. You bring in Demeco Ryans, you're going to have people that, gave up on the Texans about 2-3 years ago, but because you brought in a former beloved player who is still top 5, top 10 in this franchise history, people are going to jump back on board. You just finished talking about what he could do for these young guys, and I definitely believe that he can tremendously help Christian Harris, who I do believe it has the qualities and the potential to be at least a Pro Bowl linebacker by the time he reached the peak of his career. You know what he could do on the defensive side of the ball. And of course, when I take a look at San Francisco, and I don't think this get brought up a lot in terms of when defensive coordinators go after head coaching jobs, like, on the offensive side of the ball, if it's a offensive coordinator, i.e. Eric Bieniemy, the first thing people ask, did he call the plays? What did he orchestrate? You don't have to worry about that when you look at the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan has the offense, and whoever his defensive coordinator is, and as of right now is Demeco Ryans, he is orchestrating, and everything that you see from that defense is all Demeco. I'm glad that you pointed all of that out, because that is part of the reason why he has become my top candidate. However, you touched on it a little bit, looking at Sean Payton. Sean Payton had this interview with the Houston Texans early on in the week. Sarge, I'm not sure if you saw the last couple of episodes, but even though he is not my favorite NFL coach, I kind of feel like I compare Sean Payton a little bit to Doc Rivers, somebody who is well respected, somebody who is he knows the game, but at the same time, his track record is dependent on one championship. And in Doc Rivers' case, he is linked to Ray Allen and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett more than anything. And in Sean Payton, he only linked to Drew Brees.
So, Cody, I don't know. Have you ever seen have you ever seen on the street corners because you grew up in Louisiana, you grew up in New Orleans, you've been on like Canal Street, where they do the shell game, where they say find the ball, they have the 3 shells and they keep moving the ball, right? And then they say, okay, find the ball. So that's a game, and the majority of the time they have a magnet in their hand. There's a magnet that moves the ball, but I don't know if I was supposed to tell their secret. They play the shell game with anyone. But you know what else they do? They have people in the crowd that they have that's working in cahoots with them. So they'll have people winning that they're working with. And then, when you step up, now it's time for you to play the game, then you lose. You be like, well, they just won all the money. I preface my statement by saying this. First thing, Sean Payton and Colin Cowherd are playing the shell game with the rest of the the rest of the NFL and with the rest of the media. I mean, I know you've seen Colin Cowherd's commentary about Sean Payton, and it seems like he's the only one that knows exactly what Sean Payton is doing.
Exactly.
They're playing the shell game. So I hope people realize that that's what's happening. I hope that the Houston Texans are realizing that that's happening, and they can move along. Also, what Sean Payton is doing, I feel like Sean Payton's a con man, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, because how I feel. I appreciate what he did for the game when he was coaching in New Orleans, but one, he quit. Like, he was under contract and he quit. He quit. I mean, he did. He was still under contract and he walked away and he quit. So what is he doing now? He wants to be able to get paid, because we've seen, if the numbers are true, allegedly he wants what
like 20 million a year or somewing along those lines.
right? He wants to get paid, and in the midst of getting paid, what is he else is he doing? I want to make sure that the New Orleans Saints are taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm fine with that, by the way.
You are, because you're a fan.
I say, because I cover the Texans and I understand, they can't afford to give up what the Saints want. I hope you don't rob the Texans, but like Broncos and all those other, like, you know what? Go ahead and rob them if you want.
Well, it can't be Carolina, because they finna not have any draft picks. But Cody, like, it's just a whole con game. It's just a con game. And how long is he going to do it, Cody? Where is he going to go?
Mm-hmm.
I asked this question on social media. Is he coming back for his legacy, or is he coming back for the passion? Because I tend to lean towards more of his legacy. So meaning that he'll pick a team that's ready-made to go to make a playoff run. A team that, like the Broncos, like with the right head coach and the right offensive system, I feel like the Broncos have the pieces and the tools to make it to the playoffs, and they could do some damage in the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you bring a person in like Sean Payton and retool Russell Wilson's mind with the receivers that he has over there, with the offensive line. It's not a bad offensive line, not a great offensive line, but it's not a bad offensive line either. So they have way more than what the Houston Texans have. I feel like 2 years into this thing, is Sean Payton going to all of a sudden not want to coach again? Is it going to be an Urban Meyer situation? Does your heart hurt? Like, what is going on, Sean Payton? I mean, and he's not getting any younger, Cody. So how much longer does he have to add to his legacy? Because the things that you mentioned earlier and the things that you've mentioned throughout your podcast on Locked On Texans, you got to say to yourself, you only have one Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
One. And when we start talking about other coaches, when we all start talking about your legacy, yes, they're going to attach you to Drew Brees, and they're going to say, but you only won one Super Bowl. Like right now, I don't feel like Sean Payton's a Hall of Fame coach, but because he is Sean Payton, he could probably get pushed through in name alone. Side note, Cody, the reason why I brought that up was, side note, I was watching a interview with, you remember Andre Rison?
I think so, yeah.
Wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, Left Eye's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about now.
He made a good point on an interview. He said, we always say that Jerry Rice is the best wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
How come nobody ever mentions Andre Reed, though? And if you go back and you look at Andre Reed and look at his numbers, you'd be like, wow. You look at his numbers, you look at what he has, you'd be like, wow. So I say that to say that we're going to look at some of these other coaches that's going to come along later on. Like, people won't put Mike McCarthy into the Hall of Fame because he's Mike McCarthy. And, of course, the stigma behind Mike McCarthy. But you're going to put Sean Payton in there, and they're the same person. I personally do not want to see Sean Payton coaching the Houston Texans. I want to see a younger coach that'll come in here and doesn't have an ulterior motive. A coach that's going to come in here and be hungry and want to be the coach, wants to be the coach of the Houston Texans, wants to lead the Houston Texans into the next phase of whatever they're going to do. Not a coach that's going to come here and want to get paid and just try to build on his legacy, which he's not going to do. I honestly and truly don't believe that Sean Payton is ready for a rebuild. And you and I have had this conversation about another sport in a rebuild.
This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. Listen, unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck, right? And there are therapists with BetterHelp that are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, it's secure, it's accessible anywhere, and it's 100% online. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched over millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. All the benefits of an in-person therapy, plus It's more convenient, again, more accessible, but overall, it's more affordable. There's no waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked on. That's betterhelp.com/locked on.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this weekend Saturday installment of Locked On Texans. Big Sarge is over there on the opposite side of my computer screen. Sarge, the second segment, we touched on why Demeco Ryans is going to be a great coach, and I think, well, a good coach for the Houston Texans. And I think the one thing that we all agree on, whether you're a reporter like us, fans, that we want to see whatever head coach that the Houston Texans hire have a long tenure alongside their next franchise quarterback. And as of right now, unless, look, I understand there's two quarterbacks that the Houston Texans should take, but this is the Houston Texans we're talking about. And about 15 years ago, they was in the same situation, and they took another guy over Vince Young. And yes, I'm still upset about that, as you guys know, especially you guys who've been rocking with this podcast for an extremely long time. But for the sake of this argument, we are expecting the Houston Texans to draft either Bryce Young or CJ. Sarge, when you take a look at both of these quarterback prospects, who do you feel is going to be the best prospect for the Texans if they have an opportunity to draft them?
Well, I wrote an article, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago on Texans Wire USA Today about the Houston Texans should follow in the same path in which the Cincinnati Bengals did. I wrote about the familiarity. And the reason why I said that was because the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Joe Burrow first and then brought Jamar Chase. Both of them played at LSU. Both of them won a national championship at LSU. That year that Joe Burrow went crazy.
2019, Stingley on the opposite side.
Yeah, when he went crazy, who was his wide receiver, right? So it was Jamar Chase. They bring him in the next year, their first year, Jamar Chase's first year, they go to the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying that if the Houston Texans draft Bryce Young, that they're going to go to the Super Bowl, because there was also other pieces in place for the Cincinnati Bengals. It was almost like a plug and play with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I feel that the Houston Texans have the first piece in John Mechie, wide receiver John Mechie, and I know that's going to take some time for him to get his body back together, coming off of, the cancer and going through the radiation and the chemotherapy. I know it's going to take him a little time to get his body back in playing shape, but I feel that once he gets his body back in playing shape, that if he is playing with Bryce Young, you remember the year that Bryce Young won the Heisman Trophy, John Mechie was his wide receiver. The year before that, when
they caught for over 1,000 yards too that year.
Yeah, and it was after. So I think it was the first 6 games. The first 6 games, they didn't really. First 5 or 6 games, they didn't really do too much together. Then they lost to A&M, and then after they lost to A&M, his numbers increased, and him and Bryce Young found that connection. And if it wasn't for him getting hurt in the college football playoff, the SEC championship against the Georgia Bulldogs, if it wasn't for him getting hurt, that kind of derailed the national championship hopes and aspirations for the University of Alabama. So you got to think about it like this. John Mechie played with Mac Jones the year that they won the national championship. The quarterback that now plays for the New England Patriots, he was an intricate part of them winning that national championship. The next year he comes along, and he was an intricate part of what Bryce Young was able to do. And so I feel that Bryce Young is, by far who the Houston Texans need to draft, because it not only will it put them back together with familiarity, but when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, when Joe Burrow gets in trouble, he already knows that exactly what Jamar Chase is doing or what he's going to do to get him out of trouble. You got a rookie quarterback who, if the Texans draft Bryce Young, you're going to have a rookie quarterback who's going to have some type of safety net, right? And what better safety net to have than somebody that you're already familiar with, somebody you know where their catch radius is, you know the way they run the routes, you know exactly what they're going to do. Also, it's going to be like it, not as like it's going to be, but it's going to be John Mechie's rookie year too, right? It's his second year, but it's going to be his first year actually playing. And so, what better way than to get him back acclimated or get him acclimated, into the NFL than to have somebody that he's familiar with. Now, that's no knock on CJ Stroud. I like CJ Stroud. I like what he did in the last game that he played in. Like, he looked very, very good. I won't take that away. And he has looked good throughout the season. I just feel like that Bryce Young is more NFL ready, if I could say that. Not from his body type, but not from his stature, but from his mind. And for a guy his size, he knows how to avoid taking big hits. And if you can do that, then you can play this game for a very long time.
And Sarge, I'm glad that you pointed that connection out, having Bryce come here to Houston. He already has that familiarity with somebody like John Mechie, because me and John talked about this a couple of days ago, how I'm expecting that to be the new trend of the NFL for rebuilding teams. And like every sport, regardless of what it is, whichever team either win a championship or come out of nowhere, like the Cincinnati Bengals, and get to a championship game and all of a sudden explode, it seems like all the other teams try to follow that model. And when you take a look at the Houston Texans, not only do they have John Mechie on the defensive side of the ball, you got Christian Harris. Both you and I had an opportunity to kind of joke to Christian and be like, look, they might be getting your former quarterback. How you might like that? And of course, he just give us that smile. But I would love to see the Houston Texans be more so of a trendsetter, other than like they was the previous 10 years, as trying to follow the exact same model and replica of the New England Patriots.
Well, Christian Harris also told me when I asked him about Bryce Young, he said, Bryce Young they all have that. They all fall in that same line, and they always use that same line that offensive lineman Larry Tulsa used. He a dog, right? So he said that when Bryce Young was on the scout team, he said he used to give us the business. He said that when we would go up against Bryce Young, he was a quarterback on the scout team, he said we really had to make sure that we were paying attention, not only to the plays that was going to be ran against us, but also make sure that we contained Bryce. Because even though he was running scout team offense, he was out there like as if he was starting for us. He said, so I knew, he said, I'm not surprised. He said, I'm not surprised one bit by what Bryce is doing. He's always shown that. He said, and he's a great leader too.
Sarge, as you know, it's a big weekend in the NFL divisional round. I'm not about to go game by game because I already know one game you rooting for your Dallas Cowboys.
What time your team play though?
My team is waiting. We getting the sofa ready, down here in the South, how it always start, Texans sit first, then it's the Saints, and then, we got to keep it. No. First it's the Texans, then it's Atlanta, and then it's the Saints. And then we always got that. We always got that last spot ready. We thought for sure the second time actually that we all rooted for Tom Brady. He started showing his age. So it was like, all right, but Brock, we really believe Brock might get y'all. So, that last spot on the couch, we keeping it clean and ready just for them boys to come join us down here in the South.
Wait. Side note. I know this is the Locked On Texans podcast. I know this is a football podcast, but I got to say this. Hey, did you see how I set you up against KJ Martin the other night in the room?
Hey, for those of you guys who don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I forgot what week it was, the Cowboys lost the game, started talking noise to Sarge. KJ Martin, who of course you guys know the forward of the Houston Rockets, he joins in. And me and KJ had a back and forth about which team was like more trash. Was it the Saints? Was it the Texans? And the Cowboys. And I gave him that same exact analogy because he was like, is your team going to the playoffs? And I was like, no, but we getting the sofa ready, the couch ready. For you guys.
After the first
yeah. I said after the first playoff game. So of course we see him Wednesday, and of course he sets me up with KJ. KJ start laughing and making fun. KJ's a Cowboys fans. Unfortunately, it was 2-1. I took that loss, but I'm ready to talk some noise next week. And by the way, I definitely hope the Cowboys lose on Saturday because this upcoming week, the Rockets have like
on Sunday, so they can't lose on Saturday.
Well, yeah, so they play on Sunday. I got to see KJ Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week.
Oh, wait till I tell Jabari that, Jabari Smith Jr. is a Falcons fan.
Oh, yeah, I know. So, I don't want to say much to him because, it's always that rivalry. And, look, I got to make sure, he could continue giving me good stuff, If he finds that out, then, he going to treat me like other media members he don't like. Right. But then we getting away from the topic here.
I didn't want to do that, but I had to make sure that I, brought that up.
But Sarge, as you know, it's a big week. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to go game by game and get your picks. But if there is one big upset that you can see on the board, what game would that be and why?
I'm glad you asked that, Cody M. Davis from Locked On Texans Sports Rated. So let me adjust my hat when I say this.
He about to say something crazy, y'all. I already know it's coming.
I am taking the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Kansas City Chiefs at home in Kansas City.
Oh my Lord.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout like everybody thinks it's going to be. And I do think that if it comes down to it, that Jacksonville can do it. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, we know that making predictions on games is like trying to predict the weather. You know what I'm saying? It's 50%
down here in Houston.
Right, 50% right, 50% wrong. But one of the reasons why I say that is because the years that the New York Giants won the Super Bowl, what were they? They were the wild card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really expected them to win. The year that the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the New England Patriots, nobody expected them to win, right? They had
somewhat. Yeah, you're right, because Carson Wentz did get hurt, and it was already top of the league at that moment.
And they had Nick Foles come in, and nobody thought that they would beat the New England Patriots. Well, if I got faith in anybody, if there's any one coach that I have faith in throughout these playoffs right now, it's going to be Doug Peterson because he's done it before. Now, last weekend, I felt like Jacksonville had a terrible first half. Everybody's saying that. They got that out their system. They got themselves together. Then they put it together, and then what did they do? Also, yes, Kansas City Chiefs offense is amazing. Their defense is horrible. Their defense is horrible. So if you get Christian Kirk and Zay Jones to get into some space, they can do what they need to do. You get Travis Etienne into some space, they can do what they need to do. And the Jacksonville Jaguars do not have a bad defense. So before they played the Chiefs, they lost to the Chiefs earlier this year. Before they played the Chiefs, they were on a 5-game losing streak, right? They had 1-6. 1-5 in their last 6 games. Since then, Cody, they're 6-1. They've won 6 games in a row. They are a totally different team than what the Kansas City Chiefs played early on in the season. Because the team that they played then is not the team that they're going to play now, like I said. For as much as people, love the Kansas City offense, their defense is not good, but nobody is really giving that Jacksonville Jaguars defense a lot of credit. Now, I will say this, though. If what's the number 1 pick? Is it Trayvon Walker?
Trayvon Walker.
If somebody has to pull Trayvon Walker to the side and say, hey, you're going up against the NFL's darling. And the NFL loves Patrick Mahomes. Don't breathe on him. Because, he has a tendency to do some boneheaded things at times.
Like he did against the Texans, and that was against Davis Mills.
Right. He did something crazy last week. I'm like, you can't even get close to Patrick Mahomes enough. If he throws the ball, just take off running the other way. And once he cocks his arm back, jump high. Like, stand next to the referee and jump high. So he can
don't jump high, because sometimes when you jump, you lose your balance and you fall forward.
That can be true too. So if he doesn't make any bonehead plays and they play a good game, I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars can pull it off.
It's not gonna be a blowout, but I definitely don't see Patrick Mahomes losing that game.
Do you know how insufferable I'm going to be if the Jaguars beat the Chiefs? I don't even if I was you, I probably wouldn't even answer the phone for like.
I would be fine. I would be fine.
Because you know how I like to be when I'm right.
No, you could be right. But I know one thing: if the Cowboys win Sunday, I might go on a hiatus because at that point I'm starting to get nervous.
Cody, let me tell you something. I want all the fans of Locked On Texans to hear this, okay?
Because man.
The
Because
Cowboys,
I'm looking at. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm looking at what's left, and I'm like, man, I don't think my stomach is. No, please no.
Cody, if the Cowboys win, I am going to hack every show you and John have for at least a week, leading up to the NFC Championship game. Cody, y'all going to be talking about how, y'all going to be breaking down whoever the next head coach is or whoever the offensive coordinator. I mean, I said offensive coordinator. My bad. Defensive coordinator. Did I say offensive coordinator out loud?
Mm-hmm.
Lord, did I let the cat out the bag? Hey, so anyway, I'm going to make sure that I break into you all's whatever y'all have going on talking about the Texans, and I'm gonna jump in, and all I'm just gonna keep saying is, "How about them Cowboys?" And if I can't get on, I'm gonna report every one of y'all.
Oh my God. With that being said, that concludes this weekend installment of Locked On Texans. Sarge, really quick before I let you go, let everybody know where they can follow you on all your social media platforms and where they can find your work as well.
You can find my work at Texans Wire USA today under Brian Bearfield. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Big Sarge Sports with the Z at the end. Oh, and TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok too, man. I love TikTok, but you can find me on there, Big Sarge Sports with the Z at the end. Before we go, Cody, because I know that this is an audio and a visual platform, so I want to make sure that I go like this. Because there's make sure that young man can screenshot it the right way.
Oh my God. Well, this is Texans, and they got to deal with the other team that we cover. So I highly doubt that he would get that.
Now I see why y'all don't have me on the line.
But as always, please remember to follow Locked On Texans on all your favorite podcast streaming services and on YouTube. Be sure to follow my co-host John Hickman at John_Hickman12, and be sure to follow me, Cody M. Davis, on Twitter at Cody Davis_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.